students, in this video we are going to cover chapter 6 of class 7th. The name of the chapter is the age of reorganization. Okay, so this is a very important chapter, and this is a time period when Mauryan empire started declining, and at that time what kind of new empires were started coming. This is about that. Okay, so what are the main topics in this chapter which are going to study? About emergence of Kushanas, about Satavahans, about surge of sugar. So you are going to study about a lot of things in this chapter. So this is a long chapter. Okay, so let's start with the first topic, that is the surge of the Shugas. Okay, but before that let me explain you that what is actually age of reorganization actually is. Okay, so the age of reorganization is that kind of time period when Mauryan empire started declining and new kinds of inventions started coming. Okay, new kinds of inventions started opening, or that type of time period is known as age of reorganizations. Okay, Chief Pushyamitra Shunga around 185 BC, so all that we are going to study about. Okay, so this is just the intro of the chapter. The first topic is surge of the Shugas. Okay, so Pushyamitra Shunga is mainly the founder of Shunga dynasty. Okay, Shunga dynasty rule is in the part of North and Central India. Okay, is in the part of North and Central India after the Mauryan Empire, and he performed Ashwamedha Yajna to assert his power. Okay, this is the funda of almost every king to expand its power. Everyone wants to become more powerful. Okay, so with that, what did he do? He started adopting Ashwamedha Yajna. Okay, what is this? In this a particular kingdom allows his horse to, generally they are powerful kingdoms, allows his horse to run in whatever area that horse covers, that automatically becomes the part of that kingdom whose that horse belongs to. Okay, and if any person of that of any kingdom stops the horse, then the battle between both the kingdoms happen. Okay, so this is how the kingdoms expand and assert their powers. Okay, so this is the funda which was used by Pushyamitra Shunga to expand and assert his powers. Though smaller than the Mauryan Empire, okay, though it was smaller than the Mauryan Empire, but he defended it from the inventions and later maintained peace with the Greeks. Okay, this is important. The empire declined within a century after his rules. This period saw a revival of Vedic rituals while other philosophies also continued to thrive. Okay, that means these empires started declining after a century. Okay, but it was continued to thrive. Sanskrit became a key language for philosophy and literature. That means they helped for art and literature. Okay, they were interested in that. Shunga dynasty supported literature, art, and architecture, as I mentioned. The Bharat Suba, okay, which is now in Madhya Pradesh, is an example of Shunga art which they promoted at that time. Okay, these are the examples of Shunga dynasty. This was all about which you have to keep under your mind. Next, another powerful dynasty is Satavahanas. Okay, this is important. Shunga dynasty likely fought war with several neighboring regions. Okay, including Satavahanas. Okay, that means the fight between Shunga dynasty and Satavahanas already happened. Okay, Satavahanas was ruling in the Deccan areas. Okay, around 2nd century BCE. Okay, that means Shunga dynasty was ruling the north and central part areas. Okay, Shunga dynasty was ruling the north and central part areas, and Satavahanas ruling the Deccan southern part areas. Okay, next we have another important thing, that Satavahanas are also known as Andhras. Okay, Satavahanas were strong dynasty. Okay, and they were economically very developed. As you can see that their coins were highlighted. Okay, they were advanced in shipbuilding. Krishna Godavari rivers for agriculture was thrived. Okay, several spices, textiles, sandalwoods, and luxurious items like gold-plated pearls and ivory were also exported. Okay, so they were economically very wealth. Okay, economic prosperity and political stability under Satavahanas encouraged the growth of literature, art, and culture. Okay, so they were politically very stable. They were economically very stable. Okay, and overall in a good position, so they were supporting literature, art, and culture because they had money to invest on them. Okay, next we have life under the Satavahanas. This is important that in Satavahanas tradition, so this is a role that princes names. Princes were often named after their mothers. Okay, for an example, it's also given in your book is Gautam Putra Satakarni. Okay, who is okay, who was named after his mother, and she was considered as a very powerful princess because he also devoted his land to Buddhist monks and left his important inscriptions at Nashik. Okay, so she is a very powerful woman. Inscriptions at the Nanekhat caves near Pune highlighted Satwa's widow queen who performed, widows are those whose husband died. Okay, so who performed Vedic rituals including the Ashwamedha Yajna. I already explained you the meaning of Ashwamedha Yajna. The mentioned god like Indra, Chandra and Surya and Indians are generous donations. Okay, generous who loves to denote the things. Who generous means who loves to give their own things to someone to help them. Okay, so of land, animals, coins and gifts of priests, gifts, works, scholars, monks. Okay, that they were very generous people. Okay, generous donations of land, coins and all these things, they were generous. Written in Bahami script, these inscriptions also featured fairly early numerous, some resembling modern number evidence that today's number system has rooted in ancient India. Okay, the Satvahanas were devoted followers of Vasudeva Krishna. Okay, this is important that Satvahanas were devoted to followers of Vasudeva, that is Krishna. Okay, but also supported other religion traditions. Okay, they often guaranteed tax-free agriculture led to Vedic. Okay, that means they guaranteed tax-free agriculture to led to Vedic scholars as well as Jaina and Buddhist monks also. Okay, encouraging the growth of diverse beliefs and practices. That means they do not believe on what particular kinds of beliefs. They believe in diverse lives and practices, and that's why they also, in order to prove that, they also granted free text to Jaina and Buddhist monks as well, along with Vedic scholars. Okay. Now in the 3rd century CE, which is 3rd century Common Era, the Satvahana Empire broke apart into smaller and independent kingdoms. That means the Satvahanas, which is a very large and strong kingdom, now started getting splitting into smaller kingdoms at the time of 3rd century CE. This fragmentation was derived by, I hope you understood this term, this fragmentation is a biological term, okay, which have you also seen this in bio, that fragments means breaking a large portion into small pieces. Okay, this is called fragmentation. Okay, so the fragmentation was driven by several factors, most notably weak central authority and a slow economic decline. Okay, because earlier when the kingdom was united, that the economic condition was very good, as we have discussed above, but now when it was fragmented into several small kingdoms, now the economic growth was started declining. Okay, as a result, regional powers were able to assert or reassert their influence and laying the foundations for new kingdoms. Okay, that means regional powers were started controlling them. Next, coming of the Chaidis. Okay, now Satvahanas, now Shuga dynasty, and now next we have Chaidis. Okay, so very different kinds of invasions started coming. After the decline of Mauryan Empire, Kalinga. Okay, after the decline of Mauryan Empire, Kalinga emerged as a powerful kingdom under Chaidi dynasty. Okay, Kalinga is also emerged as a powerful dynasty under Chaidi dynasty. One of its most notable ruler, Kharavela, was devoted follower of Jainism and was often referred as Bhiksu Raja, monk. He showed respect for all philosophic traditions. Okay, near Bhubaneswar, the renowned Ujjagiri Khandagiri cave believed to have created for Jain monks display beautifully carved panel statues, special chambers into rocks. These caves stand as remarkable example of rock cut architecture. What they are saying that Chaidis was also one of the powerful rulers after decline of Mauryan Empire, which is age of reorganization. Okay, which is exactly the name of our chapter. So this is also a kingdom which arrives at that time period. Okay, so this is what notable ruler they are talking about, Kharavela. Okay, who devoted follower of Jainism. Okay, and often referred to as Bhiksu Raja and monk king because he was a follower of Jainism. Okay, he showed respect for all philosophic traditions. That means he believed in every kind of traditions and respected them. Okay, near Bhubaneswar, the renowned Ujjagiri Khandevar caves believed to have been created for Jain monks, display which is beautifully statues and others were organized. Okay, for example, this is an example and a real picture is given in your book. Okay, next we have one of the caves features the Hathi Gumfa inscriptions of Brahmi script that details King Kharavela's dynasty achievements, his military victories and efforts for public welfare. He also boasts for forming a council of ascetics and sages from 100 regions and being a protector of all sects. He respects for all beliefs, reflects an important aspects of Indian ethos. Okay, Indian ethos means he respected for all religions. Okay, all belief respects. Okay, important aspects of Indian ethos. Okay, that means he believed on everyone, no discrimination kinds of thing was going on. So this was all about that. Next we have kingdom and life in the south. Okay, Till now we have studied about Chedis, we have Shedis, we have studied about Satavahanas, and we have also studied about Sugar dynasty. Now we are moving on to the next important portion, that is kingdoms and life in the south. Okay, let's study about this. So between 2nd and 3rd century BCE and 3rd century CE, okay, I am sure we have just studied about 3rd century BCE, okay, CE, three major kingdoms, the Cheras, Cholas and Pandyas, rose to power in southern India. I will show you the locations of these places. These kingdoms often competed with each other for the dominance, but also played a key role in advancing trade and culture in the region. That means they all three were fighting each other to create dominance in each other, but still they were advancing in trade. Okay, Ashoka's edicts mention these kingdoms, showing that they remained independent even during the peak of Mauryan rule. Okay, that means they were independent during the peak of Mauryan rule. Later, King Kharavela claimed to have defeated a group of southern Rule who threatened his territory through the exact location of his battle in Andor, and there is no evidence he actually invaded the south. The period saw the rise of many poets who works known as Sangam literature, marking the Sangam age. Okay, so what basically they're trying to say that Kharavela, when he was died, that everything was changed, but before that, when Kharavela rule was going on, then Mauryan Empire was on its peak, and during that time, they remained independent, Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas. Okay. Their exact battle location is not given, that when Khandyas was died, okay, but so that means we don't have evidence, but he actually invaded the south. Okay, the period saw the rise of many poets who works known as Sangam literature. Okay, the rise of literature and marketing the Sangam age. Okay, Sangam age is the time period of Sangam literature. The word Sangam means assembly and refers to gathering of poets. That means where poets gather and work on their work and talk about their work. That is assembly, which they named as Sangam. Okay, so this is Sangam literature, Sangam age. Okay, this is how. These early Tamil poems are the oldest in South India and are valuable sources for understanding the culture and society of that time. Sangam poetry beautifully expresses emotions like love, values such as bravery and generosity. Okay, so that means Sangam poetry and literature were very famous among that time. In that time, okay. Now I told you I will show you the picture. This is a beautiful picture which is given in your book. Okay, where you can see Chera, Pandya, okay, and Cholas also. Okay, and Chola. Okay, so these were the dominant. These were the major south areas where everyone trying to getting dominance. Okay, so fighting also happened, but they were also known for their advancing trades. Okay, next we have Cholas. Okay, now let's study about one by one all these. Okay, Cholas. The Sangams were gathering of three important kings, the Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas. We have already discussed. The Cholas were a strong dynasty that ruled parts of South India from the 3rd century BCE to the 13th century CE. Okay, important to learn. One famous Chola king, Karikala, defeated the Cheras and Pandyas when they joined forces, showing his power over them. That means Karikala defeated the other two dynasties, that is Pandyas and Cholas. Okay, I'm sorry, Cheras and Pandyas. Okay, when they joined forces, showing his power over them. Okay, I told you that they were trying to gaining dominance over one another. So finally, Cholas gained dominance over Cheras and Pandyas. Okay, how? When they joined the forces. Clear? Next we have Karikala carried out many public works. One of the most important being the Kalanai or Grand Etiquette, built near Srinagar. It diverted Kaveri river water to the central and southern deltas, making more land fit for farming, known as the rice bowl of the south. Okay, because this land was more favorable to the farming, so this was known as the rice bowl of the south because it was in south areas. These areas still benefit from the dam that continues to support agriculture and irrigation in Tamil Nadu. Okay, I'm sure you already know that dams are really very helpful for this kind of purpose. Okay, so this dam continues to support agriculture and irrigation of Tamil Nadu, okay, which is again in south area of India. Okay, next we have Chera. So Chera is also known as Kera Putra, which is son of Kerala. This is very important to learn that Chera is known as Keral Putras, okay, which means the son of Kerala. Okay, ruled western Tamil Nadu and Kerala from their capital at Vanji, which is now Karur. They supported Tamil literature and Sangam poets. Okay, that means Cheras were in support of Sangam poets and Tamil literature. Okay, I already mentioned that Sangam means assembly. Okay, that means a group of peoples known for their trade with Rome and West Asia. Rome and West Asia, they exported spices, timber, ivory, pearls, making their kingdom a major trade center. I already mentioned that they were also very famous for trade purpose, okay, and were advancing their trades. The Chera king issued a number of coins under their reign. Okay, so this is a kind of the ruling when they were ruling. So this was the economic structure. Next, we have the Pandyas. The Pandyas ruled parts of Tamil Nadu from their capital at Madurai. Okay, so west part of Tamil Nadu was ruling by Cheras. Okay, and now Tamil Nadu. They were ruling the parts of Tamil Nadu from the capital at Madurai, okay, by Pandyas, okay. Starting centuries before the Common Era, known for expanding their kingdoms, they had strong administration and traded with Greeks, Romans and other regions, okay. So their trade part was definitely good, okay. Megasthenes described them as prosperous and they were also a major naval power. Later, Pandyas supported art, architecture and regional growth. That means they all were in the support of art, literature and architecture, okay. Next, we have the Pandyas have extended trade network both inland and overseas. They traded actively with distant regions like Greece and Rome, exported peels, spices and textiles. Roman coins and artifacts found in Tamil Nadu shows the strength of connections. The Pandyas also traded with South, East, West Asia using their strong navy to support maritime trade. Internally, they exchanged goods like fuels, tools and grains with nearby kingdoms. The Pandyas left behind many inscriptions where king expressed a care for their people, well-being and supported various schools of thoughts and religious beliefs. Okay, so this was their whole infrastructure, that they exchanged goods and they were following import export, believed in trading, okay, and also supported various schools of thoughts and religious beliefs. Okay, this was their ideology which they have described. Inventions of Indo-Greeks. Okay, now another powerful ruler we have Indo-Greeks. Okay, so as Chedis, Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas, Shunga dynasty, similarly like that we have next Indo-Greeks. Clear? So after our brief journey through South India, okay, Cheras, Cholas, Pandyas, they were all from south areas. So we now return to north where a different kinds of change was taking place. Okay, now we are back into our north area, okay, where most of us will live. Okay, while native dynasties ruled parts of the subcontinent, this period also saw the arrival invaders through the northwest frontier. These groups gained control over the northwest, northern and central regions. Okay, that means they were controlling over northwestern and northern central regions. Okay, as I told you. One key movement was Alexander, the great short campaign in Indus Plains. As he retreated, he left behind satraps or governors who eventually established independent kingdoms known as Indo-Greeks. Okay, again, Alexander the Great short campaign in the Indus Plain. Okay, he was a great person. As he retreated, he left behind satraps, governors who eventually established independent kingdoms known as Induri. That means Alexander was the one who independently established this Indo-Greek kingdom. Okay, so after the Mauryan Empire declined, I again repeat that age of reorganization was started when Mauryan Empire started declining. Okay, so these all the kingdoms we are studying are after the declining of Mauryan Empire. Clear? These Indus Greeks found it easier to take over parts of what is now Pakistan and Afghanistan. Though they came as conquerors, they were deeply influenced by Indian culture. They led to richer fusion of Greeks and Indian traditions in art and language, governors and daily life, leaving a lasting mark on the region. The Heliodorus pillars. The Heliodorus pillars near Vidisha. Okay, this is that Heliodorus pillar near Vidisha in Madhya Pradesh. Okay, so you can visit this. This is in Madhya Pradesh. Is a remarkable symbol of Indo-Greek culture exchange. Okay, so this statue which you can see in the image, this is a remarkable statue of cultural exchange of Indo-Greeks. Clear? It was set up by Heliodorus, an ambassador from the Indo-Greek kingdoms who honored Vasudeva, a form of Krishna, as the god of gods. Okay, so Vasudeva, form of Krishna, so as a god of gods he marked them. Okay, in his inscriptions. The pillars also shares a powerful message. Three immortal precepts were practiced led to heaven: self-restraint, charity and consciousness. Okay, so they also share this powerful message which is on this somewhere written. Okay, Again, self-restraint, charity, and consciousness. Clear? So exhibitions in North India have uncovered many Indo-Greek coins that are a major source of information about these rulers. Made from gold, silver, copper, nickel, the coins after featured the king on one side and Greek gods on the others. Okay, interesting, some coins also showed Indian deities like Vasudeva, Krishna and Lakshmi, reflecting the cultural meaning. The Indo-Greek rule eventually came to an end with the arrival of Indo-Scythians, also known as Shakas. Okay, and now finally Indo-Greeks came to decline. Okay, okay, after making this statue, which is god of gods, which is representing several messages. Okay, so we have studied a lot about Indo-Greeks. Okay, basically this is a very small part of Indo-Greeks basically is. So now this is in decline. Okay, and now arrival of Scythians, which is also known as Shakas, came into power. Clear? Next we have the emergence of the Kushanas. Okay, so next study about Kushanas. Okay, so the Kushanas originally from Central Asia, okay, entered India around 2nd century. Okay, so he was originally brought to Central Asia. He was not from India, but he came to India around the time period of 2nd century BCE. Okay, at their height, their empire stretched from Central Asia to much of northern India. Okay, their rule was marked by significant cultural exchange that deeply influenced the subcontinent's history. One of the greatest rulers, Kanishka, supported art and culture during the time of peace and helping create new artistic style. Okay, so this he is one of the great ruler of that time, Kanishka, who also supported art, literature, and culture. Okay, this well-known headless statue. Okay, this is a headless statue, which is a well-known, popularly known. Okay, this is a statue of King Kanishka. We have already discussed about it. Okay, and this is a headless statue. That means head is not shown in the statue, as you can see in the image. Okay, so this headless statue represents King Kanishka, the most powerful leader of Kushana dynasty. The Brahmi inscriptions describes as Maharaja Rajdhiran Devputra Kanishka, meaning the great king of kings, son of god Kanishka. Okay, so with the inscriptions of Brahmi, we came to know he was a great leader. Okay, otherwise we cannot say anything like that, but with the inscriptions of Brahmi, we came to know that he was a powerful and great leader. Clear? Now Kanishka coins featuring Buddha and Shiva reflects his inclusive approach to religious and governance. Okay, as you can see that some religious and governance approach, you can see some appearance of that is looking in their coins. Okay, now by showing both Buddhism and Hindu imaginary, Kanishka demonstrated respect for multiple faiths within his empire, promoting unity and tolerance. Okay, that means they promote unity and tolerance among people through by making these Buddhism and Hindu religions stickers, you can say. Okay, it also highlights his role as a ruler who saw the value in supporting different religious communities, helping legitimize his rules across a diverse population. This practice of featuring religious or cultural symbols or currency still exists today. That will still also see these regional or cultural symbols are printed on coins. This is still in many places. For example, modern Indian coins and notes often show symbols like Mahatma Gandhi, the Ashok pillars, or national deities and monuments. Okay, if you would notice, then you would find these symbols on the Indian notes also that represent sheer values and heritage of that time. Okay, so under Kanishka, control over key parts of Silk Road boosted trade and cultural exchange. Okay, that means they worked on this cultural exchange, key parts of Silk Road, which boosted the trade. The Kushana period also saw a flowering of art and sculptures. The Gandhara school combined Greco-Roman artistic techniques with Indian themes, especially in realistic depictions of Buddha with like features and drab tropes. The Mathura school, by contrast, emphasized native Indian styles. Okay, so this was all about this. Together, these styles influenced later temple arts and architecture, laying the foundation for religious imagery in Indian art for centuries to come. The Mathura style originated in Mathura region of present-day Uttar Pradesh. Okay, this is now present in Uttar Pradesh and is recognized for its uniquely Indian character. Okay, that means this influence is recognized uniquely for Indian character. Unlike the Greco-Roman influenced Gandhara style, Mathura sculptures were mainly carved from red sandstone and showed little foreign influence. This style is noted for its representation of Indian deities such as Kubera, Lakshmi, Shiva, Buddha, as well as Yakshas and Yakshinis, often featuring fuller, smoothly modeled figure. Okay, so this figure they are talking about, which whatever we have studied, they are trying to tell about this statue. Okay, comparison of Gandhara and Mathura art. So the comparison between Gandhara and Mathura art styles, two main schools that flourishes during the Kushana period. Okay, let's study about it. Okay, so these are the main features in short they have written. Let's study about this in deep. So both styles deeply influence Indian art and fusion contribution. So both styles deeply influence Indian art and their fusion contribution to later temple arts and iconography across South Asia. Despite ongoing political conflicts and power struggles, this part witnesses significant cultural exchanges and integration. Artistic and agricultural style blended through Indian themes, especially Hindu and Buddhist, remained prominent. It was also a golden age for Sanskrit literature, marked by the composition of major epics like the Mahabharata and Ramayana. Recognizing these connections help us to see the tapestry of the past, not as the story of a single kingdom or ruler, but as vibrant, evolving process shaped by interactions, exchange, and assimilations over time. Okay, so that means they were also bended towards the religious part also. So here our all the important points of this chapter completes. I hope you understood the chapter. Thank you.